Hey guys, this is Justin. Welcome to another video. As we have for the past month or so, we're continuing the hashtag AskEck trend. If you've got a question you'd like to see me answer on Star Wars, and maybe we'll expand it to other franchises too, leave it below with the hashtag AskEck. And Unwound Steak starts today's video off with an interesting question. Why do people hate the sequel trilogy? First of all, let's be honest and remember that the discourse we see online isn't necessarily representative of the real world. There are a lot of people certainly who hate the Star Wars sequel trilogy. There are a lot of people who like it. There are a lot of people who feel whatever about it. My son, for example, is 6 years old now. Crazy. And he likes all the movies. He chose to go as Kylo Ren for Halloween. He probably would have picked Darth Maul if it were available at the store he went to, but he chose Kylo. And at the first trunk or treating we did, a lot of his friends thought it was a cool costume, but that's certainly a non-answer. Everyone knows that internet discourse isn't necessarily representative of reality. In my opinion, the Star Wars sequel trilogy has several key faults, and the most obvious one is a serious lack of planning. I've been pretty clear about the fact that I thought Episode 7 was actually a really good reboot for the universe. A soft reboot anyway. Now, there are things that I certainly would have changed. I don't like how the New Republic was completely toothless. I did not appreciate the return to Rebels versus Empire, and too many beats were taken wholesale from A New Hope. Still, The Force Awakens did exactly what it needed to. It put Star Wars back on the map. It's still one of the most impressive box office performances I've ever seen, especially domestically. But since then, things have obviously went off the rails. Now, The Force Awakens does a good job, unsurprisingly given the director, of presenting several mysteries. Who is Snoke? How is he related to the events of the original trilogy? Who is Rey? Why is she so powerful? How did Ben fall to the dark side? And what happened to Luke's academy? And speculating in these years was a lot of fun, but the problem is there were no seeds in Episode 7, and there couldn't be because the trilogy wasn't sorted out yet. And Episode 7 didn't really suffer, but we end up getting an Episode 8 and an Episode 9, which feel like they're directly in conflict. And there are elements of Episode 8 that I really like. I think it's probably the most beautiful and well-shot Star Wars movie. I really like Yoda, and I don't even mind what happened with Luke. But for an 8th film in the franchise, it certainly feels like it sends things on a complete left turn. We're left with no big bad. Kylo really has to step into that role. And while I think that's fine for the specific trilogy, Episode 9 had the job of wrapping up not just the trilogy, but the Skywalker saga as a whole. I actually thought Palpatine returning generally was a good idea. I think he's representative of the devil in Star Wars, and it makes sense that his fingers are in each trilogy, but that's something that obviously should have been hinted at or established in Episode 7 and 8. They just needed to have this all figured out. I really think that George Lucas had the best possible approach with the original trilogy. He creates the general plan, he works with script writers, he works with directors after Episode 4 to bring his overall vision to life. I think the prequels suffer a little bit under his direction, but even then, the overall story, despite the sort of weirdness of Episode 1 being an island, it just fits and it comes together like an epic space opera, with Episode 3 honestly a triumph despite some issues. You can't say the same about what is arguably the best film of the sequel trilogy, Episode 8, because it doesn't feel connected with everything else. And when you go to Episode 9, that film also suffered uniquely due to a lack of planning because it was completely rushed. And that was due to the fact that the original version of Episode 9, Duel of the Fates, had to be scrapped and the team started over, and we got, well, The Rise of Skywalker, a movie which has a few good elements, but overall is a complete mess. To this day, The Rise of Skywalker is probably my least favorite Star Wars movie. You know, as an adult, episode 2 is pretty bad, but as a kid, I really liked it. I used to just watch the last, 1/3, like I think everyone else, and the way it contributes to the trilogy as a whole, and also the rest of the universe, probably bumps it up above 9. So, if they're going to continue, they need to fix this. Obviously, what's in the past is in the past. There's no possible way, regardless of what people tell you, that they're going to decanonize the sequels. I still think, even with the subpar episode 9 and finale and everything else, that the characters are too popular. And obviously we know that they're going ahead with Rey's New Jedi Order movie, which they might as well call episode 10, but goddamn, they really need to nail it. I was reading a few other comments. People are saying that the apathy towards Star Wars has never been greater. I don't know if I agree. There were certainly times in the early 2010s and also I'm sure the late 80s where things were looking rough, but yeah, it's not great right now. On that note, although it didn't get the hashtag AskEck tag, I do want to address this comment by Noah Bennett, who says he loves that I'm returning to my roots with lore videos, but he feels like there's been a steep drop in quality. And this got several likes, so I thought I'd address it. So, it's true. Right now, it's been a while since I've put any battle breakdowns out, and I do have an editor for the channel. Marmar does editing. Her editing style is certainly different than mine. I tend to use more video clips of movies or shows or whatever, even if they're slightly off topic. Marmar instead goes to B-roll. If that's a change that you don't like, you can let her know and me know down in the comments. But it's also partially the reality of the fact that I've been going into these more obscure topics for some of these videos. But yeah, when I'm talking about an event in The Phantom Menace where there is a lot of footage, for example, most of that should be about the Phantom Menace, even if we're talking about something a little unrelated. So we're still working it out. I've never used an editor before in my 7 years of YouTube, at least for the main channel, aside from some rare videos. So it's a work in progress. But we need to also realize, and this ties into what I was just talking about, what Star Wars YouTube is like right now. I'm glad you like the lore videos. They do all right, but my attention is spread across the internet right now. Star Wars is probably enough to support me, but I've got an entire company almost relying on me. There are like 5 people with full-time jobs attached to what I do. So I'm in the unfortunate position where I really have to do some opportunity cost analysis right now. And I've put out battle breakdowns, I've put out versus videos, and they haven't done super well. So I will do one. I'll do a fully animated battle breakdown in the next, let's say, few weeks. Your job is to watch it. I understand that you feel like maybe the reason why I'm getting less views right now than in the past is because you don't like the titles or whatever else, but look at every other Star Wars channel. I've always been near the top. I still am. It's just what's at the top has really decreased as fan interest has as well. And that's part of the nature of relying on a fandom and fan interest in a thing for your job. I don't really apologize for playing the title game. It's kind of what I have to do. It's what everyone has to do. But I never want you to feel like you're wasting your time when you click on the video. To me, that's the difference between having a clickable title and having clickbait. I don't want to mislead someone, and I don't want someone to watch my video and feel like they've wasted their time. I do want to get you in the door, but I also want to provide meaningful content. If that's something you don't feel like I'm accomplishing, then it's certainly, from my perspective, worth listening to. But before we leave, I do have one final, more lore-based hashtag AskEck question. This one's from Violet. I've seen this a couple times from her. She asks, at the end of Survivor's Quest, Mara Jade seriously considers leaving the New Republic and, by extension, the Jedi and joining the Empire of the Hand, and Luke, as her husband, offers to go with her. How do you think this would have affected Legends lore afterwards, so the New Jedi Order and beyond? That's an interesting question. We have to consider that between this point, the Thrawn duology, and the New Jedi Order, there's nothing. No real stories. It's about 6 years, if I remember correctly, but Mara gets sick before the New Jedi Order. She's infected. I honestly don't think a whole lot changes. Obviously, Luke continues to train. Maybe the Jedi Order suffers a little without his close attention, but if anything, it's possible that Mara and Luke in the unknown regions with the Empire of the Hand are able to identify the warning signs of the coming invasion, because it wasn't just the Vong popping through Vector Prime at Ramamul and Osarian. Nomenor was playing on tensions and trying to start a war between the two planets. It's a difficult question to answer, however, because the Empire of the Hand essentially disappears after the Thrawn duology. Instead, usually we hear about the Chiss ascendancy, which is sort of put exactly into its place. We see characters like Soontir Fel, however, and his son Jeg, capable allies of the New Republic, so I imagine when the going got tough, Luke and Mara would have simply returned to the New Republic, but again, the major issue may have been less new Jedi Knights out to help directly counter the Vong. Just my thoughts though. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts on all this and more down below.